Hello, it's Zoe here. Happy Australia Day. More on that in a moment. This is a public service announcement to remind you that the Kickstarter for Olympus Dawn is live now, where you can get an amazing deal and special gifts and rewards if you back the project on Kickstarter. The ebook, the audio book, and the paperback are all out and also bundled for the entire series. This is the grand finale of the Gaia story. And it's all about asking, what kind of future do we want to live into that's worth living in? We bring in geopolitical challenges, environmental challenges, and weave it together in a really character-driven novel. So more on that, check the link, click on the link in the show notes, and it'll take you straight over to the Kickstarter page. Now, aside from that, back to Australia Day. Now, Australia Day in Australia is a kind of tumultuous, topical discussion. For me, it makes me think of identity, history, belonging, and attachment to place, and the conversations amongst all of us about all of that. What I've come to realize is that we become who we are through our experience of place. We are either sustained and enlivened by place if we stay open and connected to it, or we are squashed by it if we ignore its power and magic. And certainly as I've moved to a new city, I'm very conscious of the power and story of place. Its long history, well before humans, and its future into the millennia ahead, and what it means for us just passing through. Good opportunity for lots of reflection. So my question for you this week is, how connected are you to place? What does it mean for you? Let's get into it. I have a guest this week. His name is Richard Andersen, and he is a microbiologist by professional training and a sci-fi author. He also wrote a nonfiction book, The Evolution of Life, The Big Bang to Space Colonies. And his latest book, Mars, is what we talk about extensively on the show. And I've been reading through it and really enjoying it. The conversation about AI, sentience, and relationship of AIs to humans is pretty important. And what this will mean on other planets like Mars. And should we actually go to Mars? So there's plenty to explore in this amazing conversation. Let's do it. Okay, all the way from San Francisco Bay Area, welcome to the show, Richard Andersen.
Glad to be here.
There's a lot to cover. I'm really excited about your new book, Outbound Mars, because we are both interested in Mars colonization. But the first question is, how does a microbiologist become interested in Mars?
It was a progression. Well, I've always been interested in space exploration, space settlement, the moon program, the Apollo moon program, and those things. But it was a progression from my first book, which was on evolution. And that book was named The Evolution of Life, Big Bang to Space Colonies. So I ended the book talking about the prospect of entering space as a society. And then after I published that book, I started thinking about, well, there's a jumping off point to go into fiction. So I came up with Outbound Islands in the Void, and it's kind of a survey of space settlement and why we would do it and what shape Earth is in. It's cast about 250 years in the future, and Earth is is surviving an eco disaster, and so we're in a recovery mode, hopefully. And so that book kind of opens the door to my Mars book. And there's a number of issues that you have to address if you're going to live in space. And as a microbiologist, I recognized a couple of them they don't seem to be in the news or in reading material. Most of that is written by engineers or scientists, astronomers, or other people who don't have a strong biological background. But the foundation of life, the foundation of our lives, the foundation of our bodies is microbial in nature. Even if you look at our individual cells, and they operate under central control, like a central government, our mind, our endocrine system. But we also carry microbes in our gut that actually the microbes we carry outnumber our own cells. So we have maybe 30 trillion cells with our DNA in them. We have maybe 33 trillion cells that don't have our DNA in them. And they are important in our moods, our thinking, our the digestion of our food, the function of our organs. They're an integral part of us. And when you start to realize the foundations of our existence go back to the microbes, back to these tiny life forms. So in space, it's not going to be like Star Trek. We're not going to have a sterile environment. We're going to bring all our bugs with us because we
Mm.
can't survive without them. And one of the big issues, one of the big problems is producing enough food. So we're not going to have waving fields of grain. We're not going to have cattle grazing across the prairie. Um, it'll have to be very, very efficient. So hydroponics is one thing that NASA is looking at, and but it goes deeper than that. We're going to be depending on microbes and fermentation vats to produce a large amount of our food because it's very efficient and it's very low on the food chain. So that's where
Like
the micro.
algae? Are you talking about like algae and that kind of thing, or different kind of microbes?
Um, a lot of it would be anaerobic. Um, and anaerobic being that the metabolism isn't complete. So when an anaerobe finishes its job, it leaves organic uh, molecules, organic substances behind, which are food for other organisms like us. So we can bioengineer microbes to do just about make whatever we want. And so
Mm-hmm.
we could make proteins, we could make hamburgers, not
Mm-hmm.
using the microbes themselves, but using the products of their metabolism. So anaerobic microbiology is very important in that aspect. Aerobic metabolism, they take it all the way, they take the food all the way to carbon dioxide or oxygen. Carbon dioxide, but if it's a plant, it would be oxygen. So, so plants are important because they build caloric value, which is what we're looking for, as well as nutrition. So that was the first concern was food production. And then there's a bigger concern, a larger concern is gravity. And we've found, NASA has found that people living on the space station, after about a year, they have irreversible bone loss. Um, they
It's
can recover some.
irreversible. I hadn't realized it was irreversible.
Yeah, some of some of it is irreversible. They can recover some of it. They can maintain a certain amount of bone. They have exercise equipment and so forth. But they do they have organ changes. Their brain swells. And they come back. Uh, um, if they've been in orbit 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months, if they've been in orbit for a long time, they come back and they can't walk. It takes them a while to recover their muscle strength, even though they've been exercising. So that's a concern. If you're living freely in space, as in my first novel, you're in rotating O'Neill cylinders. Dr. O'Neill, Timothy, not Timothy, can't think of his first name. Dr. O'Neill, back in the 70s, proposed these large tin cans that would rotate to create one gravity on its inner surface.
Mm.
And they would be about two 2 to 5 kilometers in diameter and maybe 20 kilometers long. Huge things. You wouldn't launch them from the Earth. You'd have to construct them in space.
Mm.
So, so you could solve the gravity problem with these rotating cylinders. And there's some engineering problems with those. But to do any of that, we need to have a presence in space. We need to mine the asteroids. We need to have manufacturing in space. And so part of the first novel was how space development could aid Earth and help in Earth's recovery in its climate from its climate disaster, and that a lot of manufacturing would move to would take place on Earth, and mining operations and a lot of farming activities would cease to exist on Earth and be replaced by the technology developed in space. So that's the premise of the first book. The second book, Mars, I look into AI quite a bit. Actually, in the first book, we have you've met Ophelia
Yes.
in the Mars. Okay, Ophelia starts the first book, and she's actually the hero, the protagonist of both stories. And but there's always a question: is she going to become too powerful? And
Ophelia
she
being an
exists,
AI, and just to be
being an
clear about that.
artificial being, a virtual being. She doesn't have a physical presence. And but as you'll find in Mars, you haven't met Bob yet, Bob the robot.
No.
Okay. Well, Ophelia doesn't have a physical presence, so she experiences the real world through Virgil, through his senses. She can see
Mm.
through his eyes. She can respond to and feel uh, the hormones and the mental state. And in fact, when he has a drink, she can feel the effects of alcohol. So she connects with the environment through Virgil. But Bob, the robot, he's dependent on his own sensors. So his all of these artificial intelligent sentient beings learn, and we have learning programs today, AI that self-learns, but it's learning from its own holodeck, so to speak. It's informational holodeck. It doesn't know the real world. It doesn't know what a tree is. It only knows what's within its own holodeck.
Mm.
Ophelia knows through Virgil, and Bob knows some of it through his own sensors, but he doesn't know pleasure and he doesn't experience, his brain hasn't evolved like our brains have over millions of years, interacting with our environment, interacting with other organisms. So it can never, his awareness can never be like a human's awareness, in my view. But he is self-aware. So then we get into the ethics of does he have human rights? Does he have uh, in other words, can someone just walk up and turn him off? That wouldn't be, in my view, wouldn't be ethical, wouldn't be moral, and it wouldn't be permitted. So he's protected by the same laws. Um, anyway, that's I
So
rambled
that's
on
the
a bit, but
premise.
no.
So let me just pull a few threads here. Before we started recording, you talked about your concern for the future of society, and likewise, as a fellow sci-fi writer, when we look at some of these things, these ethical trends of what does artificial intelligence mean for us? Where is it heading? What if we have sentient robots? What are their rights? And so on. How do we, as a society, incorporate that? So you're starting in these books, you were teasing out or exploring some of those issues. What is your concern around society that you are mapping or dealing with in your books?
Well, first of all, I think we have to, if you understand evolution and if you understand neonatology, if you understand how complex life, how mammals developed in the womb and how they differentiate and all complex animals, how they different the tissues differentiate, how they grow to be um, adults. At every point where tissues begin to differentiate, and when dividing cells start to realize, okay, I'm an arm bone, and some other cells say I'm going to be a nose, I'm going to be part of the liver. There are triggers that cause that differentiation. And it's kind of like a roulette wheel, and there's 99.99% chance it's gonna hit the right number, but it may not in rare cases. And that's where we have genetic defects, we have mutations, or just it's not even a mutation, it's just a mistake. And somebody is born with three fingers instead of four, things like that. So we will never be perfect. That's one thing. So in our lack of perfection, how close can we get? And and the way our brains evolved, we are altruistic, or we have those tendencies, but we also have selfish, self-serving tendencies, and a survival issue, a survival mode, where we will do as individuals, we don't know what we will do if we were threatened with death and we had to do something to prevent our own demise. We Very few of us are ever tested that way. So we don't know the range of our own capabilities, but we are a danger to ourselves as societies. We have members that do things. We read in the news every day about aberrant personalities that go out and shoot up the schools or whatever. We can't have any of that in space. One person could destroy a whole island, a whole society in space by a relatively easy act, because the environment outside of these enclosures is very, very hostile to human life. So we have to resolve those issues, those social issues. And in the Mars book, there is an instance where some robots kill a couple of humans, and of course, there's a reaction to that. And the reason is the humans are producing a line of food, and they've added something to the food to make it more palatable. That is has long-term toxic effects. So the robots realize that this is not going to be good for human consumption, but people won't realize the damage until it's too late. And so they try to convince these human technicians to remove the toxin from the food, and they refuse. And they try several times, and finally the robots realize that, well, if they don't do anything, this is going to go into the food, and thousands of people are going to be affected and eventually die because of this toxin. So they kill the humans. And then, of
Which
course,
is
there's
kind of extreme.
yeah, it's a little extreme, but they don't understand jurisprudence. They haven't been educated on how the law works. They've only been educated on their specific little role in producing this food.
Okay.
So, and this is because humans are afraid of them. They don't want to give these highly capable beings too much information. So they limit their access to the area of that they're working, or what they're doing. So if they're in agriculture, they become experts in agriculture and food production. And if they're engineers, they learn that, but they don't get a broad education, because the fear is they will take over. They'll be too powerful. They'll have access to knowledge instantly, perfect memories, and massive memories as well. So they would outcompete us, and so there's that fear. Anyway, that is one incident that happens, and so Ophelia becomes more and more powerful in the data sphere, which would be like the internet, and um, and she polices the data sphere. So there's another issue, which is disinformation. So we have evolved responding to an environment um, so that we can survive. So if you're a caveman and you're out walking with your spear and you hear a grunting or a rustling in the brush, you're going to be wary that something may attack you that wants to eat you. So you're going to respond to that. And so it's very important that you have your senses have a good grasp on the physical environment you live in. The problem with disinformation is your mind starts to believe and make decisions on bad information, which results in a bad outcome. So that can't continue. But the solution is pretty simple, I think. You can put bots on these databases. You can vet the information that's in there. You can suspend people who spread disinformation, either entering it themselves or sending it off to dispersing it. I don't think that's a very difficult task, but it's an important one. So we're facing that right now.
Yeah.
We rely on accurate information to make solid decisions. So another thing about our society, I guess we segged into society. Another issue is we have politicians making technical decisions that they shouldn't be. They're making medical decisions. We have judges making courts making decisions on public health. We, so I think that's disinformation in another form, and we can't progress with that kind of a governance. So I think we need to restrict our government um, to give more power for example, we have the branches of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the Congress. You could also have a technical science branch, which would have the power to veto a bill that would be detrimental to the welfare of the people or the environment. So I think that's a component, or that's an idea, just to include people of knowledge where they're needed. We have a political appointment system for federal judges and the Supreme Court. And we have people voting for local judges, myself included. I don't know anything about these judges. You know, you pick a name. I'm not qualified to make an evaluation on the quality of an elected judge. So that, in my view, should be something that comes through the profession in some way, through their societies, through their organization, and they would nominate people and the peers, and then the public could be involved. But at least the people projected or proposed for the positions would come from the area of expertise they're in.
I just want to check your opinion on this. So, one of the challenges with like ignoring authority is, or people of knowledge, as you said, is that there's objection to bodies of knowledge in themselves, saying that is not a good source of knowledge. So, like just following a lot of the trends in the United States, for example, like people rejecting scientific discoveries,
Yeah.
like previously, in the past, we've had very much a huge reliance on science. Science is the default, falling back to science as the giver of truth and the font of all knowledge. Now, lately, there's been a rejection of that. So, how does that fit with your analysis of what needs to happen? If people are rejecting this source of truth, this body of expertise, then how can we get them to come back to that?
Well, I think that's part of the disinformation, conspiracy theories and so forth. So if you start to eliminate that from social media, where you start to eliminate that from databases, and like I say, I don't think that's really difficult to do. You would start with say AI has to have a good database that is working with, or it's going to come up with some pretty weird answers, pretty weird
Mm.
things. And I think the one on that Elon Musk has demonstrated that and made some positive references to Hitler and to Nazism, and it was taken down, but it had a bias to follow his ideas and what prevailed on that database on X. So that's kind of scary. So
Yeah.
you would put these bots, these chat GPT, these large language models, you would put them on vetted databases. Now, vetting a source is not a perfect guarantee, but it's certainly a lot better than not doing anything. And science is very used to vetting articles for publication. They want to get a third party opinion. They want to if an experiment indicates a certain conclusion, they want a verifying another group to do this experiment and verify. So this is how science work is through verification and vetting, and then it would go on to the database, and the AI source would only have access to the vetted databases. So there could be a database on all about legal things, or all about medicine, medical things, or about astronomy, or whatever the topic, and they would be vetted. And the social media, you could control that. Like I said, if someone posts something that's untrue, it could be taken down, they could be fined, or they could lose their membership.
Wow,
Now, there's
you're very optimistic that this is an easy solution.
no,
Okay.
no, socially, no, no, it's not easy. Technically, it's easy. Technically, it's pretty obvious what needs to be done. How that will happen is so in my novels, we have to go through a catastrophe and a global disaster before we act, before we do something as a society.
Yeah.
And so this is what in the book, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people have died due to famine and due to just climate disruption, due to migrations, due to wars, small wars. And in the Mars book, that's continuing on Earth. Now they're resolving these issues in on Mars and in the space islands because they have closed societies, and they
Yeah.
have an opportunity to control. And if somebody is not fitting in and not, with the program, so to speak, voluntarily, they can be shipped back to Earth. That's
Voluntarily.
so.
Well,
So
can I just ask about that? Because I'm curious about that as a functional thing. So we're on Mars, and somebody has got one of these socially dysfunctional brains, in terms of they're a psychopath and they don't have capacity for compassion, and therefore they're at risk of putting the entire community at risk. The punishment or how to deal with it is just ship them back to Earth where they can run rampant there. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Well, that's one idea. If you're in a space island rotating thing out there in space, you just open the door and the interlock, and out they go.
A capital punishment for
Yeah,
dysfunctional
yeah,
people.
easy, quick and easy. No, I'm being facetious here, but my other hope is that medical science and the knowledge of the brain and um, the testing that can go on in utero and will help us avoid those people who become psychopaths. They know that the connections from the amygdala to the prefrontal and frontal lobes are not complete, are not robust in psychopaths. So when they have an impulse to do something, they don't look at they don't it doesn't go up to the prefrontal and frontal lobes where you say, wait a minute, the consequences of that action are far worse than whatever your problem is.
Mm,
That doesn't happen, or it happens on a very minor scale. So they solved their immediate problem. I don't know if you saw the movie some years ago, Fargo.
yes.
Yeah. And I can't remember the actor's name, but the kidnapped wife was in the chair with the hooded thing tied up, and she was whimpering. And the one actor was watching his daytime TV show, and he was telling her to shut up, and
Yeah.
she kept crying and whimpering. So he shot her. Then he just kept watching TV, took care of the problem.
Yep.
That's a psychopath.
Yep.
So. Hopefully, we can prevent those kinds of births in the future, and I believe medical technology is advancing at a rapid rate. And if we remove toxins, for example, in our environment, that's one. We improve the food supply, improve the quality of the food supply. I have a big thing about corporate food production. It's the company's interests are to the shareholders, and it should be 100% to the people that their customers. So the food that, especially in our country, in America, in the United States, uh, stuff is allowed in our food that is pretty disgusting. You go to Europe, or I'm sure in your country, they don't allow the artificial colors or all of the additives to the food or the ultra refinement of the food that we do in our country. So you can control those things because your food production in space is going to be very scientific because it's coming the way it's developed. It's going to be by biochemists and molecular biologists, and you're going to have chefs, to make it palatable. And there's going to be a whole organization just to produce food that is high quality, without toxins, without pesticides and fungicides, without, polonium and chemicals that we naturally have on Earth and that contaminate our groundwater and our soil and stuff like that. So I think that will cut down on birth defects and the kinds of things that we're experiencing here, and our medical diagnostics will improve to where early detections, maybe there can be an intervention. So we won't have as big a problem to deal with. However, we will never be perfect. So will will these sentient beings become our overlords? Will they control our society? Will they police us and protect us from each other?
That could be
Uh,
that's either a dystopian or utopian future, depending
it,
on
it, it,
how far it
yeah,
goes.
exactly. In fact, keep that in mind when you get to the end of the book.
I'm looking forward to seeing the end of the book. Richard, are you ready for the Fast Three?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
good. They're coming anyway. So the first question is, what is the future technology you most want right now?
Well, personally, I've always wanted a flying car, and
Ah, yes.
and they will never be practical on Earth, but stay tuned. They I have flying cars on Mars, so you'll read about it.
Awesome. And you think they're going to be practical on Mars?
Oh yes, oh yes, and you'll discover why. I could tell you, but we don't
No,
have a lot of
save it. I look forward to figuring all that out. Number two, what's the best tip you ever got for leadership?
well, leadership, and I've been in leadership for most of my career when I was working, and I started out in leadership trying to be just like one of the employees, and that didn't work. You can't. You're not one of the employees. You're not one of them side by side. You're the leader. So to be the leader, you have to make sure that, in my view, you treat the employee as an equal human as far as their value. And I always, if they needed help, if they were in some sort of a crisis situation, even minor crisis, and they needed some special dispensation, I never hesitated to break the company rules to take care of them. And I think I got a return on that for those times when you actually needed them to step up and perform, above and beyond because that developed a lot of loyalty. And so I think you treat employees with a lot of respect. And I saw many instances of managers, supervisors who didn't do that, really were pretty terrible to their employees. And you lose your best people when that happens because they have other options. And there's nothing worse than working for a bad boss. I've had those too. So, but I spent 40 years in management and then as lab director, and um, so I think I speak from a lot of experience, and you just have to learn it kind of on the fly. Yeah, you can take classes and you can uh, read books and so forth on that, which help, but um, nothing helps like experience, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my third question in the fast three is what are you reading to or listening to right now?
I started a book that my wife recommended. It's called James
Oh,
by
yes.
Percival Everett.
Yeah.
And it's a story of Jim from Huck Finn, from Jim's point of view. And I've only just gotten into the book. To be frank, I most of my reading is nonfiction and science because I use that for inspiration for my writing, and also I I don't want to copy someone else's fiction, so I want it to be fresh, I hope. But anyway, my take on that book so far is I understand the motivation looking at this story from the slave's point of view. But one of the great things about Samuel Clemens was his use of Southern dialects in his books, especially Huck Finn. I think he used 5 or 6 different dialects from the South. And James is using a formal English in his thinking and in his speaking. And I'm going like, I understand the ideas and his perspective can be very sophisticated, but his language, I think, is out of character. So I don't want to prejudice anybody about the book because I've only into it about 35 pages, but that's what I've taken so far.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Richard. That was the fast three.
Whoa, not too fast.
That was kind of like a fast, slowish three.
Right.
Um, I've got two questions left for you. The first of the last two questions is what suggestions have you got for leaders right now to help us move towards more of the utopian side of the future that you're writing about? What can they do right now to help assist us moving in that direction to solve some of our current challenges? Just one thing, because there's like multiple.
Yeah. I would say listen to listen to the facts. We have to establish what is a fact and what is there aren't alternate facts. There are only alternate interpretations of the facts. So I think the dialogue needs to change. We can accept different opinions based on the same information. That's perfectly acceptable, because we're probably never going to be 100% right. And it's always nice to have a different point of view, but we have to work from the same set of facts. So that's the first objective that we need to overcome. I don't know how we do that exactly because, well, look at the people we have in politics in this country.
Yeah, that's a challenge. So I think that's a great suggestion is to interrogate the facts and learn how to validate where you're getting your source material from. Very useful.
Exactly.
So my last question is, where can people find out more about you and all of your work?
Well, I have a website, richardandersenauthor.com, and my books are on Amazon, and I have a Facebook presence. I don't go on too often. I'm not really into social media, so I have people doing that for me. Uh,
Okay.
and which makes it more professional, actually. So there is a lot of information. I have a blog. I put stuff on there periodically. I've been starting to do some videos that will be showing up and on some of the social media. I won't place them. My marketing person will, but um, it's uh, it's a challenge because people are into sound bites, and so your video has to be a minute, not 3 minutes.
Uh-huh. I know. It's all about distillation down to the crux of the matter. And sometimes some things can't be distilled. They have to be savored. So I think there's appetite for both of those things, but you need to
That's
be
where the book,
able to do
yeah,
both. Yeah.
yeah, that's where the book comes in. I
Yeah.
love to savor not only ideas in books, but the language, the use of the wordsmithing. Sometimes it's very poetic and it's fun.
I agree. So I'll toast my fellow author. Thank you so much for writing the books and for exploring the future of humanity in space, something I am very much interested in myself, and all the lessons that we can take from that for now so that we can have a better future and a better present, hopefully. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Richard. Very appreciated.
Thank you. I had fun.
That's it for this week. I hope you found the conversation enlivening and stirring and thought-provoking. Do make sure you pick up a copy of Meta Mars, Richard's latest book. It's pretty groovy. I think you'll enjoy it. Also, drop a note on the Substack for the chrysalis and to explore what place has for you. Are you exploring a new place as you go through transition? Are you doubling down and staying where you are? Are you ignoring place? Are you leaning into it? I would love to hear more of what you have to say about that. Don't forget that the Kickstarter for Olympus Dawn is going strong. You have one more week to get your copy or copies of either Olympus Dawn, the finale, if you already have the other ones, or binge the whole series in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. In the meantime, live with the grace, lead in service, live well, lead well.